I would chant for a minute before I start, because that's the usual practice whenever I go for a interaction which we call a satsang. So this is from the ancient Vedas, this chant. So I'll chant and then we'll begin the talk. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now, the subject today given to me, right? Is mindfulness and beyond. Yeah. Very big subject. It sounds so simple, but it's really very serious, because if you're mindful, then you have solved all problems. So I'm going to take up mindfulness in its two aspects. One, of course, is mindfulness as applied to oneself, inner mindfulness, which is of course connected and linked to meditation. But you can't meditate if you don't have outer mindfulness. I'm going to explain this to you. When I mean outer mindfulness, I mean that if you don't watch where you go in your outer life, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not aware of your actions and the reactions that you have on others in this world, then it's almost futile to sit and look at mindfulness within. I can meditate for 2 hours and then come back and be the same person, then it's not meditation. So I should also watch. So therefore, in the ancient system of thought, which we call yoga, nowadays yoga is only associated with standing on your head, which is okay, but that's one part of yoga. Some sound coming. Huh? Those two mics are attacking each other. Kind of, they're imitating the world. So what did I say?
Coming out of yoga.
Yeah. So the science of yoga, basically, by definition comes from the great yoga founder of the whole yoga teachings, who is called Patanjali. The Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga Sutras. Yoga he defines as yogas chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the calming of the distracting modes of thought. Stopping of the distracting mode, not stopping thought as such, because if you stop thought as such, then you become unconscious. And for that you don't need to do any practice or sadhana, you just need to hit somebody on the head with a crowbar and then there is no thought. It is unconscious. But what it means is to make the mind so calm and quiet, and that there is only the witness part of the mind that's active. And the witness part of the mind, when you find it, is actually not part of the ordinary mind. It's something beyond. So yoga's chitta vritti nirodha means the practice or the way of life, both, by which you manage to remove all the distracting movements, waves of thought in the mind, and the mind becomes quiet. So this is the inner mindfulness. Now it has to also have outer mindfulness, because when you start the practice of any spiritual inquiry or discipline, you need to follow some rules and regulations. One can't say, well, I live as I like, which means what? Spend all my time in the bar, in the tavern, and get up in the morning with a terrible headache, and then I can meditate and be mindful of myself. It doesn't work. Or I'll be very kind to people in this room, but when I go out, I'll kick the guy outside. doesn't work. So therefore mindfulness is changing of one's external behavior and also turning in and watching oneself carefully. Both these include mindfulness, because I know people sometimes come with the idea that mindfulness is something to do with meditation, Buddhist meditation, Zen meditation. I've been talking about mindfulness in the Google headquarters for the last 2 years. So people say mindfulness teaches how to be mindful. I said, look, first thing is, are we mindful of the outside world and how we interact with it? And then mindful of what happens within. Both have to go together. Which is why in yoga there is yama, niyama, and then the rest. Yama, niyama, meaning rules and regulations to be followed in daily life. Because if you really practice mindfulness and are able to look into your mind, then you become more human than before. If this isn't happening, the mindfulness is not working. There's something wrong with this mindfulness. Okay, so let's start with the outer mindfulness first. But that's easier to do than inner mindfulness. Outer mindfulness means in your daily actions, not yours, in our daily actions. You know, I started with a Sanskrit shloka, Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu. The key word in this shloka is Saha, which means you and me. It's not one way. May we be protected, may we be nourished, may our energies increase. It's you and me. It's not one way. It's not me or you. So therefore, outer mindfulness starts with watching our actions and also our thoughts in relation to the outside world. I know many of us are roaming free. We are not in jail or we are not sentenced to death as murderers, but many a time in our life we might have thought, I wish that guy is dead. Thought. Those who actually did the action are inside, but we are outside. I had this opportunity to be with J. Krishnamurti during the last years of his life, even though he was quite old by the time, and I think a little bit memory was bad and so on. But one day we were sitting together and he said, "Sir, you know something, I have been to the lunatic asylum in the United States." I said, "What?" I thought I've been listening carefully to him, and then if he's been there, then what am I listening to? Then he clarified and said, no, I went to see the place. Oh, I said, okay, sir, thank you. So then he said, sorry, my throat is a little bad. Then he said, you know something, there's only one difference between them and us. I said, sir, I thought there are several differences between them and us. I don't think there's one difference. No, he said, there's one main difference between. Can you guess? So I tried hard. I couldn't find one single point, like saying that this is the main. So I said, then he said, give up? I said, yes, sir. He said, I'll tell you now. The only difference between them and us is they are inside and we are outside. This is the world we have. You see? This is the world we live in. We behave, we think we are very sane, respectable citizens, but deep down, we could easily wish somebody dead. Now, mindfulness in this way, in relationship to others, is the outer mindfulness. Just watch how I behave. What is my intention when I say, oh, hello? The main thing is the motive behind my action. To watch myself carefully 24 hours, not 24 hours, maybe we sleep for 10 hours, but the rest of the time, hopefully we sleep, the rest of the time is called constant meditation. Because then you are always meditating, because while you are doing your work, somebody said, how can this be possible? I can't drive and ask myself, why am I driving? This is not what I am talking about. What I mean is, what is my motive for an action? How do I relate with others? What is my connection with the people around me? Am I somebody inside the house or somebody else outside the house? I might talk of kindness outside, but I might be very cruel to my wife or my husband. So then there is no integrity, you see, there is no integration. And therefore the mind is split into pieces. And this is how we live. And if the mind is split into pieces, can we have peace? That peace is different, but this peace, P-E-A-C-E, which peace shall we have? So therefore, mindfulness includes all this. My master, Maheshwarnath Babaji, who was a wandering sadhu, who, unlike the present generation of gurus, did not have a banner or an ashram, I'm including myself, or he didn't even have footwear. I've never seen him. And he never traveled in a car or a bike. He walked. Such a being. One day, I'm not saying we should imitate him. In fact, he was also very unhappy about somebody trying to imitate. Each person is a unit and is different from others. Okay? Though there is a common link which we can come to later. So, one day he told me, suppose you meditate inside the cave for 30 years. Okay? And this 30 years you meditate 12 hours a day, suppose. And if you think you are free of anger or jealousy, jealousy is a very strange thing. Somebody is happy and I'm unhappy. I have nothing to do with it. It's a very strange malady. Anyway, so if you sit there for 30 years and you think you're free of anger, you're free of jealousy, you're very kind, he said, who is there in the cave you can be jealous of? You can't be jealous of the walls of the cave. You can't be angry with the cave. It's only when you come out of the cave, get into the bus to go home, and somebody kicks you on your foot, especially with a stiletto heel, then you know where you stand. Where is my anger then? Is it there? Is it gone? So therefore, outer mindfulness can be understood only in communion with the outside world. You can't understand that in isolation. It can only be understood in relationship. I'm avoiding deliberately all use of Sanskrit. Let's keep it clear. Well, there are words for this. So, we therefore understand outer mindfulness as being careful and watching ourselves every step, every move, every word. Words can cause a great deal of problem. Sometimes you can hit somebody, you can slap somebody and it would be forgotten in a day or two. But if you use words which hurt the person, he might carry it for life, or he or she. Words are very important. So therefore, when you speak, I'm coming to that. That's another way we communicate. When we speak, watch carefully. Babaji used to tell me, when you talk, before you say something, first, think for a second. Don't just blabber. Think for a second and say, what am I going to say first? To who am I going to say this? To whom am I going to say this? And is this the right situation to say it? Believe me, you think this is very important in your spiritual life. All these matters. It's not simply to sit down and. In fact, this is the Theosophical Society. So I can tell you that HPB, Madame Blavatsky, in many places has cautioned people against sitting down and doing some kind of meditation before they set other things in order. It could be premature. You may awaken centers and energies which you have no control over, and then instead of an adept, you end up being a medium. So anyway, I'm saying this because the teachings that I have come from roughly the same source, because the Himalayan Masters, whether she's talking about the same master, I don't know, but it's roughly the same, and it seems to be that the teachings are very, very similar. So what did I say? I think I'm also going senile. Huh? Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if people are sleeping. So outer mindfulness is therefore when you speak, for instance, to think, what am I going to say? Sometimes what I'm going to say may be perfectly all right, but the person I'm going to say that may not be the right person, right? Or both may be okay. What I'm going to say may be all right. It may even be the truth. And the person I'm going to say may be okay, but it may not be the right situation. What if I go and talk about peace and love when somebody has had a fight at home and come and say, I don't want to listen to this? It doesn't go in. So you also have to watch the situation. What am I saying? To whom am I saying? And what is the situation? So this is just an example of mindfulness in your daily life. And be mindful of how much you sleep. Especially be mindful of how much you eat. Well, you should eat. I mean, you can't starve yourself. But after a while, pull your tongue back a bit. The tongue enjoys taste. If you can control your taste buds, you can control almost anything in your system. And some form of control is required if we need to live a mindful life. So, watch how much you eat. In the Gita, when Krishna talks to Arjuna and talks about yoga, he says this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little. That's a good criteria. The middle part, this is what the meaning of middle path is. To be moderate in everything. Don't go this way, that way. Too much. You start your meditation, you're so enthusiastic that you meditate for 6 hours a day and so on. You feel nice. But within 3 weeks, I bet you will stop all meditation. Because the mind is not accustomed to it, wants to rebel and get out. So moderation is essential. So moderation, watching your intent, watching your motives, watching before you speak. Now you would say, this is a tall order, I thought we were going to do some practical meditation. But then practical meditation, imagine that one's mind is all the time, 24 hours, disturbed, split, in conflict, distracted. And then I want to sit for an hour and remain in complete attention. Is this possible? Because the mind will revert back to the same habits. So it's important to set this in order. My house in order before I set the neighbor's house in order. Okay. So that's one part of the story. The other is inner what's it? Mindfulness. So the problem with the mind, which sometimes has gone away, is that it's very often difficult to make it concretized into words. Then you have to do it. You cannot not do it. You leave it for a minute and it's the Buddhists call it shunya, which means nothing. Well, it's not nothing. It means no thing. It's not nothing. So to bring no thing into a thing is a little difficult. A little bit of a tussle sometimes. So anyway, so now we have to bring it. So mindfulness. Yeah. This is what is going to happen to you if you do too much in inner mindfulness. Okay. So where did I stop? What did I say last?
Coming from shunya to mind. Nothing to nothing.
No. Before that? Before that?
You have to be moderate.
Okay, let's think of inner mindfulness. The inner mindfulness consists of various things. It means awareness. Just as you are aware of the outer world, as you become aware of your inner mind, your inner world, which means, actually they are both interlinked, which means in meditation you first start with being aware of your breath. You know, the breath is such an important link to that which is beyond, from mindfulness to beyond. The breath is a real link to that which is beyond. And if you look at breath, just watch your breath first. No, I'm not saying watch your breath now with your closed eyes. I'm saying look at this idea of what breath is. You can live for many days without food. Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi lived so many days without food that the British got fed up and said, let's get out of here. You can live without food for many days. You can live even without water for some days. But you cannot live without breathing for half a minute. You can if you are a yogi whose breathing is neither going in nor going out. But usually half a minute is the maximum time when you can live without breathing. So what is the most important thing in our life? And when it goes, we are like an inflated tire, we are dead. So what's so important in our whole system is the breath. But we are never aware of it, never ever aware of it. We think that it is quite natural, it's going on. From birth it started, even before birth, in the womb it started. And it's going on till it stops and then we are dead. We don't give enough importance, or we're not aware, we don't give attention to the breath. However, the breath is the link between me, between you, and that from where the breath comes. You know, there's a beautiful statement in the Old Testament when it says that after making the image of Adam, God breathed His breath of life into it. Now, this breath of life, therefore, this prana, is connected to the universal source of all energy, not just your lungs. Prana is not just the wind that goes in, it's your life force. And therefore, when you understand and become aware of your breathing, under all circumstances, not just when you sit down, under all circumstances, you will notice then that your mind becomes settled and goes deeper and deeper into the inner layers. This is called awareness of breath, mindfulness, watchfulness. In the Theravada Buddhist teachings, not the Mahayana, I have nothing against the Mahayana, but in the Theravada Buddhist teachings, the only exercise which Buddha is supposed to have prescribed, which is called vipassana, which of course has now become a brand, is to be aware of your breath. To be aware of your breath meaning, to be aware of your breath while you meditate, breath which is so important and which we are not even aware of, to give a little attention to it for a change. Just as you give attention to your food, your drink, your actions, give a little attention to your breath. Now, let me explain this a little more. You know, if you're very agitated about something, and then it occurs to you because somebody said, watch your breath, go back and be aware of your breath. What you'll notice is that when you are very agitated, your breathing pattern, the rhythm of your breath is very agitated. However, when you're listening to beautiful music, or when you're doing something you really love to do, painting, I'm saying this because I paint sometimes, or music, or even you're doing some kind of a dance, but not the rigorous one where you shake your body up. But then when you do something you really love to do, revert back to your breath and watch. Breathing pattern would be very calm and quiet. So the rishis, the ancient teachers, said that if there is a link between your emotional states and your breathing rhythm pattern, and if your change in your outside state, your emotional state affects the rhythm of your breath, is it possible to adjust, tweak the rhythm of the breath so that you can change your mood? So, watching your breath automatically calms it down. If you can be aware of your breath, if you are mindful of your breath, you don't have to do anything except watch it come in and watch it go out quietly. You'll see that after a while the mind calms down. And if your mind is already purified, and if you don't have hatred towards anybody, the outside world, and your emotions are under some kind of control, then from there one subsides naturally, not subsides, one ascends naturally into a higher state of spiritual experience. Suppose the mind has not been purified yet, then it subsides into deep sleep. Both are possible. But something happens, either sleep or a calm higher state of mind. How? When the breath becomes slow. And how do you slow the breath? You don't have to say, I'll breathe slowly. You just have to be aware of it. Be mindful of your breath. Watch it coming in and watch it coming out. And if you do that for a while, automatically, after some time, you feel like taking a deep breath, like a sigh, like a deep sigh. And then watch. Everything is calm and quiet and slowed down. Now, when the when the breath slows down, when you're mindful of your breathing, when you're aware of your breath, and when it slows down and becomes quiet, and like it's as if the tempest has just been over and there's a calmness that has come, the calm after the storm. When you're there, you'll also begin to be aware of inner things which are not related to the outside world in some way, like inner sounds. The first sound you'll probably hear when the breath becomes calm is something like a drum or a thumping sound, which is actually your heartbeat, which you normally cannot hear. I mean, you need a stet to hear it. But when your mind is calm, when you're watching your breath, when you're aware of it, when you're mindful of it fully, then even that breathing you can hear tap, tap, tap in your ears, inner ear. I think this is the outer ear. And then as you go deeper and deeper in your awareness of the breath, there is a time when the breath becomes so slow that it almost ceases. Almost. It doesn't cease because the body has to be maintained, but it becomes very slow. And then you begin to hear sounds which are called in yogic terminology anahat shabd, which means sounds which come without striking two things together. Anahat means without hitting, without striking. Anahata, without hitting. So this inner sound, which is like clapping with one hand, which is impossible to conceive. You need two. Suppose you can conceive of clapping with one hand. There's an inner sound which comes not because two physical objects have hit each other, because of the inner movement of the molecules, the inner movement of the prana. There's an inner sound coming. This is the anahat sound. So as one fixes one's attention into that, because sometimes, not often, but rarely, you can even hear beautiful music coming from it. And once or sometimes when everything is quiet, you might hear something like crickets, when there are no crickets outside. If you hear that, please check if there are crickets outside. It might be that. But suppose you have rolled it out. The other day somebody told me, I'm meditating, for the last 6 days, and I can smell some beautiful perfume. I said, please check if the lady next door is wearing a perfume, because you need to also be practical about these things. So suppose you have rolled out all that, and then you really feel something special happening, some feelings inside. Now these can be produced, these can be felt by being aware of your breath. And as you become more and more aware, and as your mind goes deeper and deeper and goes beyond even the sound, when you come to the essence of your being, which neither breathes in nor breathes out, when that is reached, usually your breathing is very, very slow. You don't have to stop it. It's not forcible stoppage of breath, which is kumbhak, which also has its effects. That's a different matter. I'm talking about that when the mind is settled down, when the breath is settled down, when everything is quiet. Now this quietness, this calmness is the beginning of what Patanjali describes as your chitta vritti, the cleaning up of the mind stuff, the stopping of all the vrittis or the waves. And when this is stopped, when the mind is calm and quiet, and there is no you or me, and there is no meditator or the meditated upon, when this happens, that's the takeoff point or the tarmac from which you take off to the higher levels of consciousness. It's not the end. There are many layers. So that's the takeoff point from which you go to higher levels of consciousness. But unless that state is created, it's not possible to ascend to the higher levels, whatever we may be chanting or meditating. So this is very important to note. So there is inner mindfulness, you said it, and outer mindfulness. And to live a mindful life is to integrate the two and be mindful outside as well as mindful inside. A person who is mindful, you will find, is usually a gentle person, because the mind has settled down. You cannot even goad the mind to get angry with somebody. It's not possible, because the person sees the other person is not different from himself or herself. There's only one. You know why we see the multiplicity? It's because of the mind being split into pieces. It's like it's cracked and it's become in different pieces. There is conflict, there is confusion. I want to do something, but something is not letting me do it. I really don't want to do something, but someone is forcing me. This starts with childhood. You have a child, and the child is interested in music, but you want him to become a doctor. So what do? You force him into medicine. I'm not saying anybody in particular. Why? Because doctors make a lot of money, but the child loves music. Well, I know the case, a typical case of a lady who is a doctor boss in New York, in Long Island, who when she was young was so fond of music, but her parents were both doctors. In India it very often happens. They wanted her to become a doctor, so they forced her into medicine. She is a very successful doctor now, yes. She has no soul. Now some people can turn that regret into anger and violence, but she's not. Luckily for her, she got herself a nice piano, and when she's free, she plays and listens. He said, this is the best time of my life, when I play the piano, because she was, you see. So this is resolving a problem happens when you see that our mind is in pieces. We want something, it's something else. Circumstances. When you see that the root is actually one, and these pieces are artificial divisions of the mind, when you see that when the mind is calm and quiet, when it is aware of itself, when it is mindful of outer and inner, and also mindful of the breath, then the mind slowly starts to integrate you soon begin to see that there are no pieces, there's only one whole. Now, last. You would think that this is metaphysical, but it's just normal, logical. I'll tell you. If you say we are one, that the mind is one, you would say no, but my mind is different, his mind is different. How can it be one? Okay, let's look at this carefully. I may be angry about something, right? Maybe. You may be angry about something else. May not be the same thing, right? I may be jealous of something, you may be jealous of something else. I have a fear of something. You have a fear of something else. It may not be the same. But what's the common factor? Fear, anger, jealousy, and goodness also sometimes. I might love someone which is different from you. But common factor, I love, without the name. So, if you look at this carefully, the common factors in the mind are same for all human beings. Objects may be different, but the inner emotions are the same, common factor. So we are saying, we meaning people who have been sent out of the lunatic asylum, we are saying that there is only one mind. Artificially, it's been split into different characters, different parts. There is one mind, because all these characteristics are common to the mind. There's just one mind. If that is so, if there is a small change, if that is so, hypothetically, then if there is a small change in one end of the mind, that means in you, it must in some way reflect throughout the mind. In the negative way, you can see it. There can be one person, a powerful person, who, because of his influence and strength of mind, can influence the entire thing called mind in one block and send thousands of people into the gas chamber. One person. Now, it can also be one good person who can influence thousands of people and say, bless them that curse you. Tall order, not easy. So, very often you find an individual who's probably unconsciously has hit upon this truth, consciously or unconsciously, that there is one mind, and if I tweak one end, it's going to be reflected in the other end. Therefore, for us who want to be mindful, we should be aware of this fact. And if you want to make the world good, you can go out and reform as much as you want, but if you don't change here and become mindful of your inner nature and realize that the mind is common factor, so you need, then however much you reform outside, the problem of violence and war cannot be solved. We have to start here. If I am in the midst of war in my mind, how can I deal with the war outside? First, can I drop my arms? Can I be peaceful inside? If one person is, it can affect a number of people. So it should start with it. So mindfulness, therefore, to conclude, I was told one day by somebody, you ramble on, you have to start and conclude. So let me conclude. So to conclude, mindfulness is outside and mindfulness is also inside. And if both these can be integrated, this is called mindfulness. And if this is done, then it's a stepping stone to go beyond the ordinary mind. Right? Now, since we are on the subject, before I conclude, a small story. It's not a story. It's something true. I mean, it's not a story, but but when I do it in a storytelling way, it sounds better. Because everybody enjoys Once Upon a Time. So Jesus used parables. So, yeah, you must have seen this walk we had, right? To the length and breadth of India. I'm wondering if anything happened, but whatever. So, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, we walked 7,800 kilometers. We meaning, I'm not saying we for myself, but many of us together. And before that, I had this opportunity to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I had a private meeting which was allowed, and so I went in. A couple of things. One is I was quite taken aback by the humility of this man. I'm nobody, and I'm much younger than him. He's the head of, and so on. But then, when I went to see him, he was near the door, standing near the door with his secretary. And he put out his hand and said, "Welcome, come inside." And it's not required. Why? Mindfulness. You mind your actions, what you do. Then we went inside and we sat down. So I was worried, I didn't know where to sit. I said, "I'm taking off my shoes." He said, "But I'm wearing my shoes." So we sat down, and he sat here and I sat here. You might see it in the YouTube. And then he took out my autobiography in English, which somebody had already given to him, and he said, "I need a signature on this." So I signed the book, and he took it and he did this and put it away, because it's about Himalayan Masters and so on. So he put it. And then he said, "Okay, so that's good. You're going to walk, huh? From this." I said, "Yes." "But why?" He said, "You'll be so tired when you finish the walk." And then I said, "But I think I need to do it. I have a reason behind it." Yeah, I know," he said. "Oh, many great people have walked." He said, "The Buddha walked," and so on. "I can't walk. I have very bad knees." I said, I thought maybe he's asking, I've come to ask him to come and walk. So I said, "Your Holiness, it's okay. You don't have to walk. I mean, you have bad." "Yeah, good. Okay. So you're determined to do it?" I said, "Yes." Then he said, "May all the bodhisattvas bless you." And that ended there. So I thought now it's time to go, because there are lots of people waiting outside, diplomats and others. So I kind of got up and said, "So Your Holiness," he said, "But where are you going?" I said, "A lot of people." He said, "Nobody is waiting for me. Sit down." So I sat down. And we got into a discussion. And two things important. I was trying to talk to him about the Vedantic concept, the Upanishadic concept of that the supreme reality which we seek, but which is everywhere. In fact, the Upanishad says, "Tad dure tad vatantike," it's far and it's so near. So this which we are talking about in Vedanta, I said, it's perhaps the same that the Buddhist teachings talk about when they say shunya. Because, so I said, does shunya mean nothing? He said, no. Shunya is that from where the whole world comes and goes back. So it can't be nothing, but it's not a thing. Okay? Yes, I said, so the Buddhist expression is shunya, and the Vedantic expression is purna, full. So I said, it's two ways of looking at it. You can call it shunya because then no words can describe it, which the Upanishad also agrees, yad vacha nabhyutitam, which words cannot describe. So therefore, you call it shunya. The purna, I said, I think we meet there, yes. It was kind of okay, he said. Then I said, but the Upanishad says something very peculiar. It says, yan manasa namanyute, even the mind cannot conceive of it. Then he said, if even the mind cannot conceive of it, what is it to me? Because I have no other instruments. So let the Brahman be there and I am here, and that's the end of it. So I thought about it. I said, Your Holiness, I think what it means, from my understanding, is that the ordinary mind cannot understand. The ordinary mind. He said, yeah, so you have to be clear about it. The ordinary mind cannot understand it. A mind that is mature enough can understand it. The ordinary mind cannot. I said, that's probably what they mean. Okay, he said, that's okay. Then he said, I want to tell you something very important. Please keep this in mind. You're going for a walk, keep this in mind. He said, you know that in the Mahayana tradition, in the Vajrayana tradition of Tibet, there are two abbots. One is the Dalai Lama and the other is the Panchen Lama. I don't know, people haven't heard of the Panchen Lama generally. There are two. The Dalai Lama came into India. The Panchen Lama was caught by the Chinese and taken to China. 25 years he was tortured in Chinese prisons. For 25 years. At the end of 25 years, they set him free because they found that he is not becoming a communist, so they set him free. And then he came back and he met the Dalai Lama. So he said, we were sitting down and talking to each other. It occurred to me suddenly, and I asked him, at any point during this 25 years of torture that you had, did you ever have fear? Fear, because according to the Buddhist teachings as well as the Upanishadic teachings, fearlessness is closest to truth. He said, did you at any point have any kind of fear in these 25 years? He said he thought for some time. And he said, well, 2 times I had this great fear. He said, fear of what? He said, 2 times in these 25 years I have this terrible fear that I might end up hating these guys. And that's called compassion, you see. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama said, even I was taken aback. So, this is what happens when you're really mindful. So the true mindfulness and true sensitivity takes you beyond that which cannot be defined. So this is mindfulness and beyond. Thank you. Sorry.
Now, would anybody have a question?
Don't ask me too much about Tibetan Buddhism. I'm not sure. Yes, sir. If you can stand up, I can see you.
Could you, if you could just extrapolate on the way that you've spoken, which has been very clear, and the method that was taught by Ramana Maharishi would you mind talking about that?
Just before you answer that, can I just say we have very limited time?
Okay. So I'll try and go into this as much as I can. So you wanted to know, can you tell me in what connection would you want me to tell you about Ramana Maharishi?
Just in terms of the method of seeking the I.
Yeah. Yes. Now, even Ramana Maharishi, Ramana Maharishi's way is not everybody's cup of tea. It's not so easy. But even he said, if you cannot look within yourself and figure out your true identity, who you are, which of course starts with, I'm not the body. Now in Ramana Maharishi's case, while he was still young, he had an experience, even when he was not meditating or doing nothing, which I ascribe to his having meditated before in many lives. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So he had an experience when he actually found himself not the body, disassociated. And that stuck in his mind, and he said, if this is not true, if I'm not this body, then who am I? That's where his inquiry started, right? So now, therefore, but most of us who hear the teachings of Ramana Maharishi haven't had any such experience. So we have to start with the inquiry first and then go. We have to say that Ramana Maharishi had this experience where he found that he was not the body. I don't have that experience, right? And so I have to say, being a genuine yogi and a great person, he had that experience. He found out by inquiry that yes, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. In simple words, he said that I'm not the clothes that I wear, because if I take it out and hang it, I'm not the clothes. But when I wear it, it looks like I am the clothes. So if everything is mine, then what am I? That was his question, including the mind. Right. So that was one way of inquiry which he stuck to with great attention until he hit upon his true essence. It's not so easy in this world that we live with so many distractions. It's not very easy. So Ramana Maharishi himself, you should read, if you read some of the teachings, he said if you can't do that inquiry, at least watch your breath. At least, he used the word at least, watch your breath. Because by watching the breath, slowly you go within and begin to realize, what am I? Am I this mind or something behind? So, and Ramana Maharishi found it. There is no question in my mind that he found what we are looking for. Now when he found it, he found that which is inside, which is the true essence of being, is also that which is outside. You will not see a single picture of Ramana Maharishi with his eyes closed. Because for him, the inside and outside were not demarcated, they became the same. But he had to find it inside first. He did perhaps in early days close his eyes, but when he found it, everything was one. Now we don't have much time, but
maybe one more question.
So do you think thought is a problem or hindrance in inner mindfulness? Because thought seems to be the root cause of fragmentation and conflict. And if it is, then how do you actually do it?
First you need to be aware that it is so. That's the first step. To be aware that it is interfering. That thought always divides. Because when I say I, then I divide you. I, then you. So, but that doesn't mean thoughtlessness. Please understand this. Thoughtlessness is an unconscious state. So what we need to do first is to bring about a positive mind. First, from the negative to the positive. And when the positive, see, it's, if you describe in terms of tattvas, it's like there is tamo guna, sattva guna and rajo guna. Now in sattva guna, the mind is all settled and calm and quiet and tranquil. In that state, perhaps one is able to transcend thought. But till you reach the sattva, you need to move towards it by negating all the negatives. Philosophically and psychologically, Shankara did it by saying not this, not this, not this, not this. What I am seeking is not this, because it is still imperfect. So then when you reach a point where the mind, is what I am saying, when you reach a point when there is this thing that the mind is there, but it's lost its poison, it's defanged. Okay, then that mind itself takes you on to that which is beyond. So we need to go up to there. So in the beginning there is always duality, no question. But in the end, it's over. But in the last place, when you go to the last extent, then all you can do is to let go. Yesterday I said about the archer. So while all preparation is necessary, while you have to fix the arrow on the bow and pull the string taut, if you want to hit the target, you have to let go of the string. Otherwise, the arrow would still be there. While it's necessary to pull, of course, no question about that. So, you know what I mean.
I'd like to say thank you very much. I am Spanish, and it's the first time I hear an Indian speech like that.
Oh my God.
About India, but I appreciate it.
Thank you,
much
thank
and
you.
I enjoy it a lot.
Thank you. What do you say for gracias?
Gracias.
Gracias.
So, would you please join me in thanking Sri Anne?